The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. Airing first on Asheville FM, WSFM LP at 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions, corrections, or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of the show, you're free to do so. Just send us an email if you end up using any content. If you care to, you can send us letters at our new mailing address at The Final Straw Radio, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. This show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. If you care to support us using dirty money, you can hit up our Patreon if you want to make monthly donations and possibly win a sweet prize. I'm sending out our first mixtape in the next few days. Eyes on your mailbox if you are the person who's receiving this, and thank you for your donation. Or to make a one-time donation, you can PayPal us something by using the Final Straw Radio at riseup.net to direct the dollars. To be very clear, though, these shows will always be available for free, and there will never be any kind of paywall for this content. This week I had the chance to speak to Ricchi, who is a Puerto Rican anarchist, about an autonomous squatted community center in Borique, or so-called Puerto Rico, called Valle Garita. In this episode, we talk about the squatted space and the intentions of the organizers, plus the cultural context of squatting, reactions of the police, landlords, and banks, and some concrete asks for solidarity from the locals. We end the show with a brief report back and analysis of what went down on May Day in San Juan and all over Puerto Rico, so stay tuned for that. A brief correction from our last show, where I interviewed Nutty about the monopod blockade at the Hellbender Autonomous Zone. I stated that the MVP was overseen by Dominion Resources and Duke Energy, and that is not the case. I was thinking of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. The MVP is in fact owned by EQT Midstream Partners and Next Era Energy Incorporated. EQT has a history of fracking and is now trying to get into transport. Thanks to all the people who set me right on that. If you have any questions or corrections, don't hesitate to email us at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. And shout out to Nutty, Red, and Miner, and all those who are protecting and defending the land and water from predatory corporate pipelines. For regular listeners of The Final Straw, the sound quality might not be what you are used to from us. We are continuing to experiment with our audio setups. Please bear with us through these experiments. Stay tuned to the end of the show and for the podcast version for some announcements. But first, here are some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what?
As I speak, I see another feel-good fluff piece about the Bush family on TV. They've been a topic on the news magazine shows due to the fact that they all seem to be dropping like flies. Right after Barbara Bush sputtered out, we got fed a regular pop culture diet of photo montages and heartwarming clips that made us feel all nostalgic and misty about her. On several networks right after her funeral, multiple television journalists, independent of one another, observed, seemingly off the top of their respectively empty heads, that it felt as if America collectively lost its grandmother. It would almost feel like the corporate media and whoever it is that gives them their marching orders wanted us to think of Barbara Bush as America's grandmother and think of George H.W. Bush as America's grandfather. That's nice. It feels pretty warm and fuzzy. We all had a moment where we saw the photos of Barbara and George in their younger days, so bright-eyed and moderately handsome. So, Let me be the guy to crash this party. Let me tell you about Barbara and George H.W. Bush, America's grandparents. George H.W. Bush is the former CIA director at a time when the CIA sponsored death squads in Central and South America, torturing and executing such threats to tyrannical stability as union organizers and political opposition leaders and nuns. Then again, when was there a time that the CIA wasn't doing that? Under George H.W. Bush as CIA director, the U.S. Intelligence Service set up dummy companies headquartered in Panama and even used Panamanian President Manuel Noriega's personal accountant to launder the money through those companies. Later, as Vice President, Bush supervised the Iran-Contra project that shipped weapons to death squads in Nicaragua and brought back cocaine. These Air America 2 flights from New Orleans and Miami went to an airstrip in El Salvador called El Opongo, supervised by U.S. Colonel James Steele, with flights returning filled with cocaine courtesy of George H.W.'s Panamanian friends. That means George and Barb got pretty wealthy and lived very well by destabilizing democracy in Nicaragua and by creating crack babies in Compton. While Barb was telling everyone just don't do it, she was eating steak and lobster in Maine, financed by the poor and desperate folks who just did it. Then, it was George and Barbara Bush who referred to the dangerous economic policies of presidential candidate Ronald Reagan as voodoo economics. Well, right up until Reagan chose Bush as his running mate for the Republican ticket, at which time the Bushes compromised their integrity, sold their souls, and embraced an absolutely devastating economic approach that left millions sleeping in their cars. George and Barbara never slept in their car. They got even wealthier as a consequence of Reagan's voodoo economics, and so did their kids, one of whom, George W., set up Arbusto Oil, an oil company that never discovered oil, so that investors who paid for enough stock could get face time in the White House with W's powerful daddy. In 1988, when it appeared George would lose the presidential election to Massachusetts Governor Mike Dukakis, George approved the most blatantly racist fear smear in the history of politics. He blamed Dukakis for a prisoner from his state, a black man named Willie Horton, raping a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman while Horton was out on a furlough. A TV ad showed black men in jail garb walking through a revolving door, and it featured a picture of Willie Horton with his face darkened. It whipped up racist hysteria and fear of crime, creating an era of over-incarceration and the gutting of the social service infrastructure. Both George and Barbara told audiences, if Dirty Harry's motto is, go ahead, make my day, then Dukakis' motto is, go ahead, have a nice weekend. No, they really did. America's grandparents were overtly racist. Once in office, conscious of lagging popularity polls, Bush employed a wag-the-dog scenario, turning on his Middle East ally Saddam Hussein, after his State Department provided Hussein permission to repatriate Kuwait. Bush then used depleted uranium in conventional bombings, which led to Gulf War syndrome among Iraq war veterans returning. In decimating Iraq for no good reason, he approved the strategic bombing of water treatment facilities, a war crime in violation of the Geneva Convention. As a foreseen consequence of bombing water treatment facilities, millions of children died of dehydration and preventable diseases like diphtheria. Millions. So, when you see that footage of Barbara holding the so-called AIDS baby, and while everyone on the news falls all over themselves about her courage and empathy, ask yourself how many millions of children the Bushes held by their feet and dashed against the rocks of their political dynasty. I don't know. Maybe I'm a hater. I understand that with civilization coming unraveled and all of the political discourse devolving into the dumpster fires, our culture engineers are trying hard to invent some kind of mythology to make us feel connected to the ruling elite and to the privileged class and to the ruthless morons who oppress us. I get it. But the pandering of these really disingenuous remembrances of the Bushes just really feels a little insulting to me. So Barbara Bush held an AIDS baby. It only makes me wonder how many millions of other babies would have lived if perhaps the Bushes had died much sooner. I think we will never be liberated until the last president is strangled with the intestines of the last televangelist. The sooner, the better. This is Anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from War and Corruption in Lebanon, Ohio. If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain 243-205 Warren CI P.O. Box 120 5787 State Route 63 Lebanon, Ohio 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org. Hey, thank you so much for coming on to The Final Straw at such short notice. Would you introduce yourself for listeners and either talk some about yourself if you want to, or some projects that you do?
Sure. My name's Ricchi. I was born in New York City. I'm a Puerto Rican anarchist, and I don't really have much else to say.
Word. So we are here to talk about supporting an autonomous community squat in Caguas, Puerto Rico, so-called Puerto Rico. Will you talk about the project itself in a general sense? What are the goals or wishes of the organizers?
The name of the squat is Valle Garita. The organization that is kind of the volunteers from this organization are putting it together is called Urbe Apie, and they've been doing work in Caguas for about 3 years. The squat itself loosely has a name to inspire and organize neighbors to transform the neighborhood without gentrification. And right now, it's in this sort of big building in one of the pueblos in Caguas, Casco Urbano, and they started it about, I'd say, 5 months ago, something like that. Started with just 2 volunteers. Sort of finding the building is really close to all of the other projects that they're doing in town. They have a community garden. And there's a space where they do a harm reduction program right next to it for sex workers and drug harm reduction. And yeah, it's a big space. It started with just 2, but there's a influx of folks who are locals who live there, as well as other people who come from other places to volunteer and do work there. They have some visions to just help create resources for the community. So they've got like a community bookstore that they're in the works of building out, and a community bike shop. And it's also a place where, they're cooking food, and volunteers in the neighborhood have a place to stay. And it's also one of the few places that has power, and it's like an off-grid solar setup, and some rainwater catchment system that they set up too. When they found the building, it had been abandoned for about 30 years. And it was a complete sort of like mess. There was mold everywhere. Every floor was carpeted and had this like insulation stuff under it, and it was all molded out. And they, over the last like 5 months, and it's still going on, the cleaning, but over the last 5 months they've been tearing all that stuff out and painting and cleaning it, and it's almost to a place where it's almost completely redone. And they've also they're cleaning out a certain part of it where they envision like a place for activists, either local or from other places, to come and be able to stay and do volunteer work. And yeah.
I was wondering if you can or feel comfortable talking more about the harm reduction aspect regarding like the sex worker population that you mentioned.
So essentially the program is called Hermanas de la Calle, or Hermanas y Hermanos de la Calle, and it's a needle exchange, and they give away like condoms and first aid supplies and food and snacks and stuff. And There's a tiny building that's been used for a really long time right next to this other squat, Valle Garita, which is a place where folks use it to do the different work that they do and to live. And so it was a really good spot to have the harm reduction program because that's where folks are. And one of the projects of Urbe Apie is this like community thrift store run on donations and stuff. And the organizers of that project started the harm reduction project, and it has a few volunteers on it and building local connections with folks on the streets and sex workers, and I think it's pretty radical and a beautiful project, and some really great organizing is coming out of it.
Definitely. Thanks for going through that. So many listeners will be curious about how this project relates to autonomous disaster relief, since the rebuilding efforts after Hurricane Maria have not been well supported by the U.S. Can you talk about how and if this project relates to that ongoing sort of struggle?
Yeah, so the situation in Borique, or Puerto Rico, is pretty dire in terms of housing and space and economically. And a lot of it is caused by colonial policies by the U.S. and corporate takeovers of the different regions. It's a process that started a long time ago, but just the very most recent historical context, which is important, is sort of the basis of why Urbe Apie started. It's like around 15 years ago, there was this influx of these like corporate malls, like Walmart and stuff like that. And where the collective is based is this walking sort of like street where there's no cars, and there was several hundred, maybe like different markets and street carts and stores, and it was like a cultural center. People were coming and playing music and selling their things that they were making themselves. And it's Caguas is a valley city, and so surrounding it is mountains and countryside, and farmers from all over would come and sell local produce. And after the malls came in, that entire sort of local economy was just wiped out, and there's 12 stores left in this sort of area. And Urbe Apie started 3 years ago, and they're the idea is they want to transform the city back into a place which is habitable by people, transforming the neighborhood so that it's sustainable. People have a way to buy the things or get the things that they need, and not having this culture of cars, which is a big thing, where that sort of mediates this transition where people are driving and skipping over all these aspects of life and culture, these regions, just going to these malls. And yeah, it's not helpful for Puerto Rico and the people there. So Maria happened, and it made the situation worse, right? So in 2015, there was a census in Puerto Rico, and they found that 25% of all of the properties on the islands, the residential properties on the islands, are vacant or abandoned. And so, that doesn't include commercially zoned spaces and other spaces, and that's a huge number. And that was 2 years prior to Maria and Irma. And those storms only made, the situation way worse, where houses were destroyed, all the sort of windows, doors, everything's knocked out, things got wet and moldy, and there's just a slew now of abandoned properties, and people, not only can they not stay because the environment is, in which they have to live is not safe, but, also the local economy doesn't really support people's lives there. So the way that this squat relates to that is it is locally organized. It is a place where it was abandoned for 30 years, and there are so many spaces like this. It's sort of a symbol of what Puerto Ricans can do to change this dire situation. And because it's a squat, they're also able to use these spaces and do this transformative community work and not have to pay to be able to do that, which is really huge because no one has money. Money is not very accessible. So all of the projects that they have going there are, inspired by the idea of local self-sustainability and solidarity and interconnectedness between communities. And it's not just a symbol or a beacon in that way. It's also very practical, and it makes a lot of sense for people. And I think that makes it very effective.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for going through that. So, since this space is a squat, and it seems like we should talk about gentrification, and Caguas seems to be poised on the edge of being highly vulnerable to like a stage of gentrification. Would you place the squat into an anti-gentrification context?
I'm sure folks all over are familiar with the process of gentrification, but it's very formulaic. There's a process of devaluing a region, an area, based on demographics and marginalized and oppressed people, and it's usually in regions where there are marginalized and oppressed people, and it goes hand in hand. It's like forcefully devaluing those areas, and just because like rich people don't want to be around those kinds of people and us. So then there's the local economies are not able to sustain people's livelihoods. People sort of leave, and so there's abandoned properties in lots of places, and then there's a process where banks sort of facilitate the private gathering of all of these vacant properties or properties where people are still living, and buying them all up, slowly buying properties from people who are locals and have property there. And at that point, they're able to, raise the prices, and there's other aspects of like poor white folks moving into these areas, and that sort of creating a space where, rich white people want to go. And so in Puerto Rico and a lot of places, in Caguas, in this place where I was for the last 4 months, I'd say it's in the stage where it's abandoned, and it's also parallel to the stage of disaster capitalism following these hurricanes that, all these private interests want to come and buy up the place because it's very cheap right now. And in terms of anti-gentrification, I think it's a tactic that's been used before, which is squatting abandoned buildings. But it's I think it's an effective tactic, and it's strategic. And the squat is sort of, like I was saying, a symbol of what people can do. So instead of allowing the forces of capital to say that people can't use the spaces to better their communities because they don't own them, it's saying that people who live in a place, totally have the power to do that and to organize themselves and create the transformative infrastructure and supportive infrastructure that they need to live the lives that they want. And yeah, so it's part of the strategy of making this sort of tactic more widely used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that like the situation of having a super abandoned or a scene in which like many of the properties are abandoned or like in disuse just opens the door for shitty capitalists to come in and displace people. And speaking of, I guess, shitty rich people, I understand that there's some complex kind of history regarding the building's official landlord. Will you talk about that and how it pertains to the struggle for this space?
So yeah, the landlord, it's not completely clear. The technical legal landlord, I think, is in some sort of state of not being able to make legal decisions, either on their deathbed or in some sort of medical situation. And so despite that, the property's been abandoned for 30 years, but there's other folks in that person's family that are vying for succession and vying for rights. And after they saw that Urbe, Apie and the squad Valle Garita was doing all of these very public events, like inviting people to the bookstore and, inviting people to come and do work in the garden and inviting people to get involved in the community, that the landlord sort of showed up, or the family of the landlord showed up, and they requested that the organization stop using the space, and the organization was, looking to use the space, continue using the space, and they were willing to work with the landlord and even maybe buy the property or something like that. But the landlords are, as far as I can tell, powerful, rich, conservative family, and they were just like, no, you have to stop doing what you're doing and get out. And it just makes no sense for people who actually want Puerto Rico to get better. It doesn't make sense for them to stop this community from doing the work that they're doing, because they are part of that process of making the situation better. So they refused to negotiations and things, and they just said you should get out. And the organization, since it does such great work in Caguas, there's a somewhat there's a form of amnesty between the municipality and the organization, and they do things that they need to do and don't really seek approval, but they're also not getting backlash from the municipality, and that's been pretty helpful. But recently, I think last month, there was this random harassment not so random, it seems targeted, harassment from the state police, where they showed up and they showed pictures to some of the collective members from Valle Garita that they were surveilling them of supposedly moving some essentially trash from one abandoned building to another, to Valle Garita. And they were saying that the owners were Banco Popular, and that it's disrespectful and illegal for them to be doing that, which it is not illegal. And the laws in Puerto Rico regarding abandoned spaces are rather favorable for squatters. There's a pretty unattainable process by which people can turn private properties into some sort of public good project that's publicly zoned, but that requires lots of time and lots of money. But there's a sentiment there that there are a lot of abandoned buildings, and the municipalities, and they want people to be using these spaces for good and not just sort of crumbling. So they stopped these two collective members in front of the squat and showed these pictures and were threatening them with arrest. And the community sort of came out. There was a group of 30 folks, and sort of defending the right of people, I don't know about the right, but the power that people have and the ability people have to be using, again, the resources that are around that are not being used to make their spaces and their lives better. And it escalated rather quickly. One of the supervisors came and sort of arrested these two people, and they were released later that night, but it turned out they didn't have charges pressed against them. There wasn't actually any complaint by the supposed Banco Popular landlord, and so that was very strange. It's very strange for the state police to sort of come to this area and sort of overstep the municipal police and harass people for doing something which is very common and never sort of repressed, and to target them and arrest them. And The thought is that the landlords have some sort of connection with the state police, and that the state police are sort of aiding in this process of kicking them out in particular, but also with gentrification. And it turns out like the landlord family can't move forward with like orders of eviction without legal names, and so the idea was that they arrested these folks without charges just to process them and get their legal names, and so there's some sort of coordination happening there. It's also in this state where the municipality is also interested in that property, so yeah, it's complicated, and the police keep showing up at the squat and questioning people and demanding a right to enter and things like that.
Is it I guess usual or normal that the police have this kind of reaction to squatted spaces?
No, it's not normal at all. Just because of the sheer number of abandoned spaces, it doesn't make sense. And there's people living in abandoned buildings everywhere, in Caguas, and I'm sure in many other places. It's just what people have to do, and people are not arrested or harassed specifically for that. And in fact, there's, I think this same census found that 53% of all properties on the islands of Puerto Rico are in some way squatted, where there's no like technical deed or title in the name of the people who are living there and who own it. So squatting is just kind of the way that people relate to space there, and as like a majority of spaces and people. And in some regions it's more.
That's super interesting. So, where was I? So, is there anything else to say that you would say about like what the reaction from the police is like? What I was basing my question off was that one specific incident that you told me about, regarding like them having photos of people and them like reacting in a really unusual way. But like, is there anything else to say about backlash from law enforcement or anything like that that people want broadcasted?
Yeah, they're specifically targeting this group. They have a very clear and radical vision for how Puerto Rico can be transformed, and again, as they say and as they state, like without gentrification, in an anti-gentrification fashion. And the government in Puerto Rico and the state want Puerto Rico to be transformed with gentrification. They're trying and actively selling off public infrastructure to be privately owned, like the schools, like the public energy utility, the public communications utilities, and that is their political agenda. And I'm pretty sure they see this project and what it could mean for the rest of Puerto Rico as a threat to their political agenda, and so they're targeting them.
And I understand that many, if not all, of the people who are participating in this squat are like either socialist or anarchist leaning. Do you think that that has anything to do with, other than like having an invested interest in gentrification, do you think that that has anything to do with the like ramped up kind of repression?
Probably. Yeah, I think the history in Puerto Rico is actually quite repressive to folks who vie for different forms of independence for Puerto Rico, either from the U.S. or other sorts of like sovereign understandings of what that place can be. And they're very effective organizers, and they're doing very transformative work. And I don't think they're necessarily specifically singled out because they have those leanings. They don't necessarily talk about them in that way. It's just, that's if you look at what they're doing, that's the leaning, and if that's, no matter if you call it that or not, it's still dangerous to the state and capital.
Definitely. So since this space is in like kind of the beginning stages, like you mentioned, people were still cleaning it out and still like getting it ready for an eventual vision, there are a few concrete asks for supporting this project. What are they, and what should folks keep in mind when like they're thinking about helping?
Yeah, part of the vision that they have is that locals there, but also more than that, an internationalist presence can be there and be engaged, and Puerto Ricans from the diaspora can come and plug in with these projects for local self-sustainability and, you know, reconnect. And so that's one way that people can plug in, and again in a way that is respectful of the people there and their desires. And so I'd say reach out to that organization if you're interested in being a part of the work that they're doing. And also they asked regarding the repression of the squat to sort of have people send in letters and cards to the organization to show support, you know, to say words of inspiration and solidarity, and bolster the morale of people there, to show that there's support from all over, and that, you know, although they may be in the minority with regards to the kinds of work that they're doing and the visions that they have, that, you know, there is this collective vision around the world for what the world can be without the state and without capital. And, you know, it's also a way to show that there is a presence, not just in Puerto Rico, but around the world of support. And if they decided to repress this community and evict the squat, that there would be knowledge of it, that they wouldn't be able to do it silently, and that there would be anger and repercussions. And what else? Yeah, I think that's the asks that I remember.
Gotcha. And you mentioned that the vision is gonna be, or the vision is like a strong coalition of locals with non-locals, and you mentioned generally non-locals should have respect for like the vision and folks' needs, which I totally agree with. Are there any other things that non-locals specifically, if they're gonna go down and help out, should keep in mind, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think the most respectful way to join a struggle in some place where someone's not from is to be receptive to the like active welcome that you receive, whether that means that you are welcome or not, you know. So being open to that, to be able to, you know, come down and be vulnerable in that way and say, like, this is, you know, who I am and what I have to offer, and, you know, do you want this? And, you know, maybe not. And so that's something that I would say people should keep in mind. There's I think in the movements there's this sort of active question of how to be doing this kind of work and going to places where we're not from, to be in support and solidarity, and do work with locals from other places. And so I think like we're developing that, but there's organizations that are and people and lots of like history to learn from. And right now there's a group, Mutual Aid Disaster Relief. They have resources on, you know, some of the work and how that might look.
Nice. Thank you for going through that. Before we get to our last question, I'd love to hear like how people can learn more information about the squat, or like get networked with folks. And also, if people are interested in sending cards or letters of support, like where they can do that.
Yeah, Urbe Apie has a website. I believe it's urbeapie.com. I have an email, urbeapie@gmail.com. That's URBEAPIE. And the squat has like Instagram, Valle Garita. It's VALLE. Garita is a separate word, GARITA. And as well as like a Facebook, and you can connect with folks through there. For sending things, the cards and letters, and also if there were donations or other packages people wanted to send, the address of the organization is number 16 Paseo Gautier Bénitez, Caguas, PR. And you can address it to Urbe Apie. And I think that was it.
Cool. And I'll be posting all of that information in the show notes, and there'll be a permanent link up on the Final Straw Radio at noblogs.org to all of that information. Kind of switching gears a little bit because it's May 3rd as of now. I was wondering if you, and as listeners may know, folks in Borique got very heavily repressed during May Day demonstrations by police, and I was wondering if you had anything else to say about that, or like any ways that folks can support people who are facing repression there due to May Day.
Yeah, the repression was really intense. There was a very large march in San Juan, and they were headed towards Mia de Oro, which is like essentially like a Wall Street area of the main island, and that's where like Banco Popular is. That's where the convening halls for La Junta, which is the sort of unelected economic body appointed by the U.S. Congress to oversee all the government spending that Puerto Rico is allowed to do. And one of the focuses, and I think the big focus for this May Day and this march and the resistance was an anti-austerity, anti-junta sort of focus. And it's following the announcement of nearly 300 schools being closed by the government and then or the state, and moving to sell those off and become like private schools and things like that. The announcement that the public energy company would be privatized, and just the way in general that Puerto Rico is related to the U.S. and how the U.S. gets to decide the economic and local realities on the island, which have always been very detrimental with regards to this sort of like U.S. corporate takeover, with regards to things like the Jones Act and other sorts of legalities around how Puerto Rico is allowed to do trade, and the kinds of decisions that locals can make. And so the march itself in San Juan was headed towards Mia de Oro, and they were blocked by just hundreds of riot cops. Then they were let in to an area sort of closer, and then as they were let in, it was actually a trap, and so like all the cops sort of surrounded them on all sides and held them there for like 45 minutes. There was like things like shields and stuff up front, and there was some things being thrown, and one of the supervisor cops or whatever made a request to the crowd, saying like, if you stop throwing projectiles, like you'll be let through. And then sort of like that announcement was made, and then the projectiles like stopped, and then they geared up in gas masks and took out their gas grenade guns and their rubber bullet and pepper ball guns, and started pushing and shot the gas off. And there was a lot of people who were hurt. There was a lot of people who were hurt. They were swinging batons and kicking people, and like just trampling people, shooting pepper balls at people is very dangerous. And so like the march was very chaotic at that point. People were separated, and let's see, that was in San Juan, but there was some other marches in Condado, and there was a big presence in Rio Piedras as well. And after May Day, I think the arrest count was like a 19 or so. And yeah, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah, that sounds like no joke at all. Are you aware of any sort of like solidarity efforts or like donations to like people's legal funds or anything like that?
I don't know of any of those efforts. I do know that one of the people who was arrested, their information was not given out by the state, and so they're kind of like lost in the system right now, and without really clear charges or anything like that. But that's all I know about that.
Yeah, that sounds not great. Well, thank you so much for your time and coming onto the show and having this interview with me. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or any closing words that you would like to leave listeners with?
Just from talking with people there, like the last thing I'd like to say is that Puerto Ricans have, the situation is untenable, and they have lost their fear of the repercussions. And quote was a quote from a comrade was that they can take our lives, but they can't take our desire and will to defend them. So yeah, they also wanted to say that the people of Puerto Rico and of other places, all places, communities there have the power to recover and to develop and rescue their localities, their places, and to transform those places. And yeah, and with that, the state is going to be there to protect capital, but we still have a desire to defend our lives.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Ricchi, and thank you again for coming onto the show. It's been really great getting to talk to you about this and getting to meet you a little bit. And yeah, if there's anything else that the show can do to help this struggle, please hit me up again and we can make something else happen.
Thanks for the time, and yeah, it's been good talking with you.
To connect with this project, you can go to their website at urbeapie.com, urbeapie.com, and to write them, you can email urbeapie@gmail.com. On the social media, you can follow the Valle Garita squad by following at Valle Garita, VALLEGARITA, or following that same hashtag. You can also search for them on Facebook. Also, you can follow Urbe Apie on Instagram at Urbe Apie. For sending cards and letters of support, you can address envelopes to Urbe Apie, Paseo Gautier Bénitez, number 16, Caguas, Puerto Rico, 00725. Letters can be written in Spanish, English, or any other language. To learn more about mutual aid disaster relief for guidance on being a non-local in centers of radical struggle or work, you can visit their website, mutualaiddisasterrelief.org, or follow them on social media at Mutual Aid Disaster Relief. Here are some announcements from some comrades in Rojava. Quote, "We would like to announce a new media project from Rojava, Mesopotamia. Vedenga Rojava, Echoes of the Resistance, which is described as an internationalists' radio project bringing an inside look into Afrin resistance. Revolutionaries from different parts of the world, organized in different collectives and organizations in Rojava, found an importance to come together and launch an audio project focused on the people's resistance against an invasion of Afrin Canton carried out by the fascist state of Turkey and its jihadist proxies. Our aim is to spread an awareness of this historical event and inspire English-speaking folks all over the globe by ongoing struggle and revolutionary organizing in Afrin Rojava and beyond. Listen and share the reports, updates, analysis, interviews, stories about the lives of fallen comrades, music, and more. This radio show will be a limited project and will only have 3 issues. For more, you can tune in on May 16th, 10 days from now, on soundcloud.com/Vedenga Rojava. VEDENGAROJAVA. End quote. And here's an announcement from the 2018 Asheville Anarchist Book Fair, who is well into the preparation for the next Another Carolina Anarchist Book Fair, happening June 22nd through 24th in Asheville, North Carolina, and wanted to invite you to participate in shaping the themes and helping gear up for this exciting weekend. They are holding an interest meeting to ask for volunteers and discuss possible contributions folks can make. Monday, May 7th, which is tomorrow, at 7 p.m. at Firestorm Books and Coffee on 610 Haywood Road. The main items where help is needed is street team promotion, online social media promotion, arranging housing for out-of-towners, fundraising, cooking food, and the day of, which is the biggest need. If you have other ideas, input is welcome. And if you can't make this event but would like to participate in helping make this second annual Anarchist Book Fair in Asheville happen, an online sign-up sheet exists at, which I'll link to in the show notes. In some very sad news, Josh Gertz, an anti-racist skinhead, was murdered 2 days ago in Chesterfield County, just south of Richmond, Virginia. He leaves behind a family, including a very young child. The family has set up a GoFundMe to help pay for the funeral and to help raise the child, which you can find at gofundme.com/Josh Gertz. That's JOSHGERDTS. Rest in power, Josh. You'll be missed. And finally, here's an announcement from No More Deaths. Quote, "On January 17th, Scott Warren, a humanitarian aid provider from the group No More Deaths, and 2 individuals receiving humanitarian aid were arrested by U.S. Border Patrol. Scott was preliminarily charged with felony harboring and could face 5 years in prison. The arrests took place just 8 hours after No More Deaths released a video of Border Patrol agents destroying water gallons and aid supplies, and a report which concludes that Border Patrol plays a significant role in the destruction of humanitarian aid. They need your support to fight these charges and resist the dangerous, divisive claim that sharing food and water with undocumented immigrants is a criminal offense." End quote. If you'd like to donate to this group, which does excellent solidarity work with people crossing the border between Mexico and the U.S., you can visit this particular page at nomoredeaths.org. If you'd like to hear an interview that we did with a member of No More Deaths, you can go to thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org and search for No More Deaths. This all is coming on the heels of ramped up repression by Border Patrol against No More Deaths. For an article about this issue, you can type into any search engine The Intercept, and the title of the article is "We're Gonna Take Everyone," and we'll link to that in our show notes. To take us out for the majority of this hour, we have Calle 13, which is a anti-authoritarian band from Borique, with Querido FBI.
Esto es un mensaje de parte del residente Calle 13 para todo el gobierno y para todos los puertorriqueños. Dani, métele ahí. Queridos compatriotas, abogados, maestros, alcaldes y chotas, doctores, bichotes, bomberos, enfermeros, contables, traqueteros, piragüeros, todo el mundo entero. Por mi madre que hoy me disfrazo de machetero y esta noche voy a ahorcar a 10 marineros. Hoy tengo la mano aniquilada y a mano pelada les voy a dar una pela para que vean que el gas pela. Nuestra bandera la han llenado de meao, murió desangrado, mi gente que murió desangrado, nunca arrodillado, lo van a tener que enterrar parado con el machete al lado. Que se activen la Perla, Llorén, Barbosa, Manuela, Caimito, Vista Hermosa, Covadonga, Camarones, Altura, Torre Sabana, Villa Esperanza, Sabana Bajo, Villa Fontana, Gladiola, Villa Carolina, el pueblo de Trujillo, Las Parcelas, San Juan, Monteatillo, Canales, San José, Río Grande, Luquillo, Puerto Tierra, Santurce, Monacillo, urbanizaciones, caserío. El FBI se ha metido en un lío, están jodidos, se jodió la Casa Blanca. Ahora voy a explotar con estilo en el nombre de Filiberto Ojeda Río. Me tumbaron el pulmón derecho, pero todavía respiro. Me voy a los tiros, pero todavía respiro. A los federales con piedra les tiro, y si no hay piedra pues les tiro con guiro. Con lo que sea, tumbaron al hombre pero no a la idea. A todos los federales los escupo con diarrea. Me dan náusea, me dan asco. Yo sé que estoy perdiendo los cascos por culpa de ustedes, jodidos brutos. La calle 13 está de luto. Con calma, compi, hay que ser astuto. Cállate, fucking federales, gandules y guardias estatales que no hicieron nada con las manos cruzadas, se quedaron mamándose un bicho. Fucking cabrón gobierno que permite esto. Chorro de puercos son todos unos insectos y por eso protesto. Protesto por una masacre en Ponce, protesto por un Cerro Maravilla y hasta por un septiembre 11. Lucha, lucha, como lucha libre, por la libre, viva Puerto Rico libre. Hay mucho tiburón en el Caribe, 100 por 35 es el calibre. Lucha, lucha, como lucha libre, por la libre, viva Puerto Rico libre. Hay mucho tiburón en el Caribe, 100 por 35 es el calibre. Pa' explotarle esos cabrones los colmillos, hay 3.9 millones de cuchillos. Esto es sencillo, se me prendió el bombillo. Lo que hay es que activar a los corillos, en vez de apuntar para los mismos caseríos, apuntar para arriba, para donde hace frío, para los del norte, sin cojones la radio y las ventas. White Lion me dio el pasaporte para tirar este corte. Lucha, lucha, como lucha libre, por la libre, viva Puerto Rico libre. Hay mucho tiburón en el Caribe, 100 por 35 es el calibre. Lucha, lucha, como lucha libre, por la libre, viva Puerto Rico libre. Hay mucho tiburón en el Caribe, 100 por 35 es el calibre. Este fue el residente Calle 13. Calle 13. Acuérdense de mi nombre, porque lo van a tener en las carpetas. Acuérdate. Con todo el peso de la calle. Con todo el peso. Te va a caer la calle 13 completa. Para que respeten. Aquí se respeta o se te espeta. Se respeta o se te espeta. Se respeta o se te espeta, puñeta.